everybody. Aya, welcome. My Govanen for all of you who are new here. We have some new patrons. This is Calantirniel, Lisa Allen, and Dave is in the background, ready to share his excellent notes for part 3 of the Ainulindalë from the Silmarillion by J.R.R. Tolkien, and we are only streaming this live for our patrons, and then the replay will be available for the public. So just so that everybody knows how this works. Hi, Anna. How are you? My Govanen. We have Faith is on with us today, too. And I know a few other ones because I gave you guys the link in Facebook Messenger. And by the way, a note about that. So I've been, for some reason, blocked from Facebook for my community standards, and I really think that it's all they want is my phone number.
Oh, that, yeah.
You know, yeah, because I mean, I don't really post anything that is offensive or anything on Facebook because I know what's happened to my friends. So that's what's going on. So I haven't been able to post on the groups or anything, but that way, I mean, I am still able to use Messenger oddly. So that's kind of weird. So I gave a lot of people the link. And I wondered if that is working. And it looks like a few people I definitely messaged on Facebook Messenger. And I think that there's going to be more. And there's also some on Instagram that are going to be coming in too. So, and Ian, I think, mentioned it on the Patreon post, the one that we posted. Okay. Dave, without further ado, I'm going to do our live adds to stream. Okay. Teacher notes. Does everybody see the teacher's notes?
I may have to share.
Hi, Esther.
Oh, okay. You got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Well, you have your own notes on your screen, correct, Dave? Yeah. So I'll just, Okay. I'm going to have you, I think I'm going to have you take it away.
Okay. You want to have me start reading? And did we want to switch off the paragraphs? Like
I'll let you. I mean, they're probably bored of hearing me already. So go ahead and begin.
Okay. Okay. This is Ainulindalë, lesson 3. This is the final section. We're going to finish out the what a lot of people would call the chapter, but I call the book because they were kind of designed to be presented that way. So this is the final section of the book of Ainulindalë, the music of the Ainur. So here we go. Thus it came to pass that of the Ainur some still abode with Iluvatar beyond the confines of the world, but others, and among them many of the greatest and most fair, took leave of Iluvatar and descended into it. But this condition Iluvatar made, or it is the necessity of their love, that their power should thenceforward be contained and bounded in the world, to be within it forever, until it is complete, so that they are its life and it is theirs. And therefore they are named the Valar, the powers of the world. And there's a long discursive note here, which you guys can read. It mainly goes into the idea that when what I'm just about to read about other worlds, it's not really talking about alien life, although it may imply extrasolar planets. So I'm just going to go on with the first part of the note 1 here, footnote 1. It says, an alternate reading expands upon this. Others there were, others mean other angelic beings like the Valar. Others there were, countless to our thought. They're known, each and numbered in the mind of Iluvatar, whose labor lay elsewhere and in other regions and histories of the great tale, amid stars remote and worlds beyond the reach of the furthest thought. But of these others we know nothing and cannot know, although the Valar of Arda maybe remember them all. And I thought that's a neat statement, and other things may have been going on in other parts of Aya, but it wasn't a duplicate of what's going on Earth. They're other jobs, basically. And I go into a whole explanation on why that's the most likely explanation. We can gloss over that now. Did you want me to read the next part?
Well, actually, I think that that's a really good point, because I do have a lot of people asking me when they start reading the Silmarillion, are the Valar like, are they angels? And I would kind of say that they're different things. I see why that people, if they are Christian, if they feel like angels, or I'll have people that are neo-pagan, or Wiccan, or other kinds of I guess pre-Christian earth-based spiritualities, but that they have like pantheons and all of that. They'll ask, is it the Elven pantheon? And kind of, but not really. I mean, because I do think that it's a different thing because of the origin story.
Right, and it even says in another section of the Legendarium that with regard to the Valar, and men have called them gods, but it's
right.
The important
right.
that men have.
But just gods. Because men call them gods does not mean that that's what they are.
Right.
I love that. That is so cool. Dave, you're such a lore master repository of Tolkien. It's awesome. Okay, I'll go ahead and read the second paragraph. But when the Valar entered into Ea, they were at first astounded and at a loss, for it was as if naught was yet made which they had seen in vision, and all was but on point to begin and yet unshaped, and it was dark. For the great music had been but the growth and flowering of the thought in the timeless halls, and the vision only a foreshadowing. But now they had entered in at the beginning of time, and the Valar perceived that the world had been but foreshadowed and forsung, and they must achieve it. So began their great labors in wastes unmeasured and unexplored, and in ages uncounted and forgotten, until in the deeps of time and in the midst of the vast halls of Ea, there came to be that hour and that place where was made the habitation of the children of Iluvatar. And for those of you who do not know what children of Iluvatar are, that is the elves and then men also. And in this work, the chief part was taken by Manwë and Aule and Ulmo, but Melkor too was there for the first, and he meddled in all that was done, turning it as he might to his own desires and purposes, and he kindled great fires. When therefore earth was yet young and full of flame, Melkor coveted it, and he said to the other Valar, "This shall be my own kingdom, and I name it unto myself." And I'll scroll down a little bit more. I'll go ahead and read up till the second footnote.
Okay.
And I'll read the second footnote.
Okay.
But Manwë was the brother of Melkor in the mind of Iluvatar, and he was the chief instrument of the second theme that Iluvatar had raised up against the discord of Melkor, and he called unto himself many spirits, both greater and less, and they came down into the fields of Arda and aided Manwë, lest Melkor should hinder the fulfillment of their labor forever, and earth should wither ere it flowered. And Manwë said unto Melkor, "This kingdom thou shalt not take for thine own wrongfully, for many others have labored here do less than thou." And there was I'm sorry.
That actually should be no less instead of do less.
Oh, no less. Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Oops. Computers. For many others have labored here no less than thou. And there was strife between Melkor and the other Valar. And for that time Melkor withdrew and departed to other regions and did there what he would. But he did not put the desire of the kingdom of Arda from his heart. And that brings us to the second footnote. Okay, No, I was looking at the important life here. Okay.
Yeah.
That is a long footnote, Dave.
Yeah, first
so
footnote is
I'm going
extremely
to footnote 2 here.
Yeah.
Here we go. That's amazing. We should maybe like dive into these footnotes a little bit, but for right now, I will read this one. Footnote 2 reads, "Fate of the immortal elves to inhabit."
No. That's actually it. The actual footnote to see since the first footnote is so long, I actually should have probably split it off into a separate little paper. But the second footnote starts with, "Therefore the Valar avoided him, Melkor, and began the building of the Ordering of Arda without him." So if you can find that, it should be further down.
Hang on a second. Is it okay? Is it within the same paragraph?
Let's see. It's no, there's like 1, 2, 3, and then at the very end of that. Oh, wait a minute. It looks like
there it is. Okay, I see what you're saying now.
Yeah.
I apologize. I had the wrong number 2.
Yeah, the endnotes are very small. Some of the sections in the
little
one
baby
above
number
it.
2 that is a footnote.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, we're thus entertained this afternoon. Therefore, the Valar avoided him, which in brackets is Melkor, and began the building and ordering of Arda without him, for which reason it is said that whereas there is now great evil in Arda, many things therein are at discord, so that the good of the seemeth.
The good of one seemeth to be at the hurt of the other.
The good of one seemeth to be the hurt of another. Yes, okay. Nonetheless, the foundations of this world are good, and it turns by the nature to good, healing itself from within by the power that was set there in its making, and evil in Arda would fail and pass away as if it were not renewed from without, that is, comes from wills and beings that are other than Arda itself. As it is known well, the prime amongst these is Melkor.
Yeah, so, what that's saying, it's very different than classical Gnosticism, for example, most of which branches considered matter itself to be inherently bad or evil, or at least not conducive to good things. This is saying that basically the nature of physical reality and the reality that we inhabit as living creatures is by its nature good, and that if you didn't have people continually trying to destabilize it, it would right itself. Like if loggers cut down a forest, and when they leave, it doesn't just remain that way; it starts to grow back.
Right.
So that's the idea.
So, and well, I guess that we can like look at how the Earth dimension, plane, whatever we want to call it, has this life force that regenerates, and yes, by its own like monitoring, and nature on its own is full of balance, but yet full of dynamic change to create that balance and life. And the other half of that would be the destroying or death force. So it's like life and death.
Right.
And that we have to have death in order to have life. But with Melkor, I mean, he's like just death to everything, right? Unless it's his.
Exactly.
And then like knowing from the stories that it's not his, it turns just weird, turns totally weird. But yeah, there is a life force that I think would regenerate and recreate balance on the earth, even despite the markings of needless destruction. Let's just say that, because I do think that destruction happens to make room for life, but Melkor is like destruction plus. Like
exactly.
He is something else.
This right, and this inner good nature of you know, the natural world, is I've heard people say, in passing, talking about Tolkien. I guess when they encountered especially when they encountered the Silmarillion for the first time, some of them who know about other spiritual systems will say, "Why, it's just like Manichaean Gnosticism," and if because good and evil opposing forces. But when you look further into it, it really isn't. It may have superficial resemblances, but if you squint your eyes enough, a dog can look like a person from a great distance. If you squint your eyes out,
Oh, Dave. My goodness. But I would say that Tolkien did that a lot, and a lot of people coming from any background, it seems like, oh, did Tolkien mean whatever their background is, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah.
And
exactly.
Guilty as charged. I mean, I did it too when I was reading, but he truly had a grasp of what it was that he was bringing forth, and it wasn't. I really believe it wasn't made up. He was looking at a divine design, and was able to see that and bring it forth. I really think that.
Exactly. Yeah. If you'd have been like a regular author creating backstory for a larger story,
kind of like a George Lucas or something.
Yeah, it would have been. It would have come out very different. It would have come out like that. It would have come. Well, let's say a modern author who writes a lot, like Stephen King. He writes a lot of and makes backstory, but the backstory is very different than what Tolkien did with the whole Silmarillion. Here,
and we're talking about writing styles that are antithesis of each other.
Right.
Or anathema or whatever.
Right.
Oh, it's too early for me.
I mean, I really don't want to pick on Stephen King, but I've actually had some Stephen King fans come up to me in the past and say stuff like, well, what Tolkien did wasn't any different than what Stephen King does. So look at this and look at that. Yeah.
It's like, did they read Tolkien, or are they,
No, I think they're like synopsizing of what a pre-existing belief that they want to force fit. Mathematically, it's called a force curve fitting. So you have your data.
Wow.
You have your data. It doesn't really agree, but if you force it enough, you can make it look like whatever you want.
Yes, we try to shoehorn Tolkien into a category.
Right.
How many times have we actually over the years just addressed that issue alone, wherein people really want to shoehorn Tolkien into their whatever it is, and really, I truly believe that it's a standalone path on its own.
Yeah, exactly.
Even if Tolkien didn't get to fill in all of the blanks the way that he could have, had he, if he could have lived for 200 years, right?
Mm-hmm. And didn't have a professional job making demands on his time.
I know. And I also think about all the material that wasn't published. I mean, of all the material that was published, and it's immense, okay?
Right.
At this point, it's immense. We know that there's in some storage locker, in the Tolkien estate, like boxes and boxes of things that never got to see the light of day. And that would have been really cool to have that. It's kind of like, I guess, the Catholic Vatican holding, the best library in all of the world. I mean, I would think that it would be like that they are holding the best Tolkien library in the world also, for no eyes to see. And it would be very interesting to be able to go through that. And like, for our purposes of the co-founding of the Elven spiritual path, I think that we could look at it with new eyes.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, okay. Are you ready to take off at Now the Valar?
Yep. Okay. Now the Valar took to themselves shape and hue, and because they were drawn into the world by the love of the children of Iluvatar, for whom they hoped, They took shape after that manner which they had beheld in the vision of Iluvatar, save only in majesty and splendor. Moreover, their shape comes from their knowledge of the visible world, rather than of the world itself, and they need it not, save only as we use raiment. Yet we may be naked and suffer no loss of our being. Therefore, the Valar may walk, if they will, unclad, and then even the Eldar cannot clearly perceive them, though they be present. But when they desire to clothe themselves, the Valar take upon themselves forms some as of male and some as of female, for that difference of temper they have had even from their beginning, and is but bodied forth in the choice of each, not made by the choice, even as with us male and female may be shown by raiment, but is not made thereby. But the shapes wherein the great ones array themselves are not at all times like to the shapes of the kings and queens of the children of Iluvata, because at times they may clothe themselves in their own thought, made visible in forms of majesty and dread. So what it's saying there is sometimes they may not appear humanoid at all. In fact,
right. Well, but they are the Valar. They're different, and they live on, well, and now it's truly a different dimension, as we know from the, future of the stories in the Silmarillion, with the sinking of Numenor and thereby the bending of the road, where, okay, for some of you who are watching this, and you may not have read that far into the Silmarillion, Arda had what they call Valinor, which is the Blessed Realm, which is the home, if you will, of the Valar. And at one point in the early history of Arda, the Earth, the children of Iluvatar, elves and men, could have went on what they would call the straight road and arrived in Valinor. That was taken away by when Numenor sank, and another name for Numenor is Atalante, and many people think that this is kind of an overlay of the stories of the sinking of Atlantis. And so that like name, there's that kind of before Atlantis and after Atlantis.
The name Atalante literally means downfallen. So.
Oh, yeah. Wow, and then we have Atlantic Ocean. Oh, wow.
Right.
Oh, Tolkien was such a genius. Anyway, so what happens now is that men cannot go to Valinor. Now, when men die, we talked about this in one of the other lessons, but we talked about how they go directly to Iluvatar when men die. When elves, when it's time for them, they will die, like maybe in battle, okay? And they go to the halls of Mondos in Valinor, okay, immediately. So death is one way to get to Valinor. And the second way would be by dreams, which we talk about with Irmo or Lorien, okay? So that you can dream that you go there. So you can go in like your astral body, but maybe not your physical body. And then the third way is by the Rainbow Bridge. And this is like all in the stories. These are in the future parts of the stories, just so that, some of you that like are newbies, okay, like that, that. So my feeling is that Valinor in its own sense really is kind of like it's part of the earth, but it's like not in the third dimension. And I think that when Numenor sank, it was a definite separation of the third dimension from the higher dimensions, including Valinor.
Yeah, because they could no longer get there by sailing.
They couldn't get there unless
ship. It was the same as we do now. If you sail far enough, you'll make a circle around the earth.
You'll make a circle. Yeah, yeah, it's the bent road, not the straight road.
Yeah.
So I know I've often wondered what that would look like, drawn out or something. Like would Valinor be kind of like, next to the earth, or you know what I mean? Like,
well, yeah. all we know is that,
But I guess there's just, it's in another dimension. It doesn't even matter what it would look like in 3D anyway.
yeah, because there aren't very many descriptions in detail about what actually happened during that change of the world. The closest we have is that
Yeah.
Valinor and Erisea, which is the island of the Telerian elves, very very close to it, were taken from the circles of the world and removed to the realm of hidden things. So there you are. That's the clearest description we have.
Yeah. But again, there is similar tales of, like, for instance, Atlantis sinking and the changes that happened
right
within the planet. And I really do believe that was, like, I guess, a separation of the physical with the other realms, even though there's still a connection, but it's just faint. It's just barely there.
Right.
And you can only access it through, like, dream state, or, like, I would even say that, like, meditation and some other things could work also. But anyway, I guess we're getting off topic. Let's go down here. I'll go ahead and read the next paragraph.
Okay.
And the Valar drew upon them many companions, some less, some well nigh as great as themselves. And they labored together in the ordering of the earth and the curbing of its tumults. Then Melkor saw what was done, and the Valar walked on earth as powers visible, clad in the raiment of the world, and were lovely and glorious to see and blissful, and the earth was becoming as a garden for their delight, for its turmoils were subdued. His envy grew then the greater within him, and he also took visible form, but because of his mood and the malice that burned in him, that form was dark, terrible, and he descended upon Arda in power and majesty greater than any other of the Valar, as a mountain that wades in the sea, has its head above the clouds, and is clad in ice and crowned with smoke and fire. And the light of the eyes of Melkor was like a flame that withers with heat and pierces with a deadly cold. Sounds kind of like his Balrogs.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love the way that this description is put in that, as a mountain that wades in the sea and has its head above the clouds, is clad in ice and crowned with smoke and fire. There's all your opposites together in a malefic form.
And in a way, to me, okay, so if Melkor, which is like this obviously extremely strong force for him to be able to do what he wanted, and then I'm going to do everything myself, and then he really is in some ways the extremes, and he, I think, resonates with, like, why Arda, the earth, would have seasons and other kinds of extreme, heat, cold, darkness, light. I mean, and we wouldn't know maybe what those things look like without him, even though he is, just something else. It'll be really interesting when the song gets sung again with the children of Iluvatar singing also. It'll be very interesting what happens. But
okay, do you want me to go on with the last
one?
Yeah,
you can go ahead.
Thus began the first battle of the Valar with Melkor for the dominion of Arda. And of those tumults the elves know but little. For what has here been declared has come from the Valar themselves, with whom the elder Leia spoke in the land of Valinor, and by whom they were instructed. But little would the Valar ever tell of the wars before the coming of the elves. It is told among the Eldar that the Valar endeavored ever, in despite of Melkor, to rule the earth and to prepare it for the coming of the firstborn. And they built lands, and Melkor destroyed them. Valleys they delved, and Melkor raised them up. Mountains they carved, and Melkor threw them down. Seas they hollowed, and Melkor spilled them. And naught might have peace or come to lasting growth, for surely as the Valar began a labor, so would Melkor undo it or corrupt it. And that their labor was not all in vain. and though nowhere and in no work was their will and purpose wholly fulfilled, and in all things were in hue, and all things were in hue and shape other than that the Valar had at first intended. Slowly, nonetheless, the earth was fashioned and made firm, and thus was the habitation of the children of Iluvatar established at last in the deeps of time and amidst the innumerable stars. And that's the end of the.
That's so heavy.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, thus the earth has begun, and it's being shaped by the Valar, who, as we learned earlier in the stories, were the ones of the Ainur who came forward and committed to the Ea, meaning the creation of the earth, and also to shape the world for the coming of the children of Iluvatar, which hasn't happened yet. It's, being shaped right now, in this part. It's being shaped before the arrival of the elves. And of course, we'll learn about that later in the stories with Valaquinta, and we'll be doing lessons of that later. So now what I want to do is I would like to shift over to the StreamYard thing and see if we have any comments. Is the chat replay going to be public or not? And yes, the public chat will be available on the video in replay. So that's not a problem. I've already set that up in YouTube.
I just wanted to make one final comment on the paragraph that we just read.
Okay.
It's almost me being a coder. This is almost reminds me of somebody like designing an operating system, but you got some hacker in your midst, and every time you try to nail something down, the hacker will put some patch in there and corrupt it. So they really had a problem on their hands. Eventually it worked out, but I'm just saying.
Well, and actually we still see all of the damage of that, if you will, bad code. I mean,
right.
Dekindre! Awesome. Hi, Dekindre.
Hello there.
Hi. Glad you could come aboard. For those of you who don't know, Dekindre is in our Hawaiian area of Tia Eldaliva, the Elven spiritual path. And I did invite him onto the live stream today. Unfortunately, we already read it all.
Oh, that's fine.
But did you read the notes, and did you have some input that you would want to let our folks know?
We just finished the last paragraph, so.
No, I think not knowing what was covered, I think you guys probably covered it. I got here late on my.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Well, we were just talking about, so how we divided up the Ainulindalë, the last part of it was about the nature of the Valar and how the other Valar acted with Melkor, meaning, because he was kind of like, in some sense, the strongest of the Ainur, so thereby the strongest of the Valar, because he came in to, also commit to Arda, but he had a different reason. He wanted to try to take it over.
Right.
And he has a lot of, destruction and all of this stuff. So it also even described him, what he looked like.
We read the part about gathered to himself other spirits, some lesser, some well nigh as great, as himself sort of idea.
Right.
Yeah.
And also,
and we also talked about Eleanor being, it'll come later in the stories, but we were talking about Valinor being separated from Arda, the earth, now after the sinking of Atalante Numenor, and how it's in a different dimension now, and you could only access it, well, if you're an elf, through death, through dreams, and through the Rainbow Bridge. And men, when they die, go directly to Iluvatar. And who knows what happens after they go to Iluvatar. I often think, and we talked about this in other videos, and I think even privately with some of our patrons, like just in conversation, I always think that yeah, I might go to Iluvatar, but then they're going to look at me and say, no, we got to take you to Valinor.
Well,
look at me
also,
yeah, you got to go to the halls of Mandos.
Also,
you gotta go over there with Monway, like making the final decision about whatever's ever going on. Like, feels kind of half Elven, like in the story.
There's a point
Even
here
though that's kind of like not really in the planet anymore.
People have actually now this is in the past. Nobody here on the call or anything, but in the 15 years we've been doing this, people have occasionally in the past come up to me and said, well, Tolkien was, what he says, we don't know what's in store for the souls of men. Yeah, it was like a wink and a nod and just a storytelling device. But no, think about it, from a scientific perspective. None of us who is talking to each other right now has ever died. We may have had near-death experiences, but we haven't been fully dead and dead. So we don't really know exactly what happens afterwards.
Yeah.
We have ideas, but
Well, and if you go by, so let's just say that belief system wise, that like you would believe in past lives, even like to embody a different body in past lives. And by the way, we're going to probably talk about that at some point in some of the lessons later, because there is ways for the elves to come back. Once they go to Valinor, sometimes they get permission to come back, but they do it in a very different way than how like our past lives, like the past lives that
they actually get
they come back as a human, but maybe a different kind of human. Sometimes they'll have the same family line, so then it seems ancestral and past life. Same time.
Yeah, I'll just give the people a little teaser here. They retain an exact within them, somehow within their soul, an exact memory of their physical body, and the ones where it's
their
allowed,
soul has the exact blueprint.
And the one that's
regenerates,
and the ones that Mandos says it's okay for you to be re-embodied, they're actually, the Vel are actually allowed to, or with help, we don't know exactly how it works, but allowed for their body to be reconstructed. And then there's another version where they can be reborn into their children. But those two ideas were never exactly settled. Perhaps both happen, but it's not like being, well, I had a life as a human and now I was born either as another human in the future or into a dog, or like the Hindus believe if you step down.
Right. Idea, there's other. Yeah, because they definitely have like some karmic tracks where like there's like rules in the Hindi viewpoint, wherein if you do this, you'll come back as this. If you do this, you'll come back as this.
Right.
There's also methods of like not coming back, and a lot of that has to do with detachment. And this is what I learned about that. It's not a true detachment because you still need to fully experience it. The detachment comes after the experience, the embodiment, the full feeling of the experience, and then releasing and letting go anyway. And that's very difficult for humans. Okay. We have a question. It looks like Anna typed in for the paragraph that starts, now the Valar took themselves shape and hue. When it's regarding, okay, it looks like they came in out of order. But when they desire to clothe themselves, the Valar, even as with us, male and female, may be shown by the raiment, but not made thereby. Her question is, does this passage have implications for human gender? And this is kind of interesting because in our time, we have like lots of gender, I guess a breadth of expression of gender at this time, both through identity and through orientation.
This was speaking about the nature of the Valar themselves. I suppose by extension, you could talk about people have different gender-oriented personalities and stuff like that, but that's not directly what this is talking about. I mean, it neither directly supports it nor directly negates it. It's just kind of orthogonal. that is at right angles too.
Well, I would say, okay, there could be resonance, and I would agree that it's different, Dave. However, I do sometimes see threads of resonance, because if Ilúvatar created the Ainur and thereby the Valar, and he created the children of Ilúvatar, the elves and men, I would think that there could be similarities between the creations, but I would say that they're not this, like, it doesn't have to be identical and the same.
Right.
So, but there might be some threads of relativity or similarity.
Yeah.
Between, like that could be like visible or, observed, but I wouldn't say that it translates exactly like, oh, the Valar did this, therefore humans. No, I would say no. Also,
yeah.
This is my own opinion. I would say that to some extent, this is my own opinion and take on it.
Okay.
I don't think that the gender aspect, as we understand it, would apply in the same way to the Valar. I would say in picking a gender at all, I would almost say that it would be in a balancing of a masculine and feminine energies. If all of them came in as masculine, I think there would be an imbalance. So I don't think that I think it's more of an energetic reasoning of choosing a gender versus a physical, as we would. I don't think they identify fully as one or the other, but when they're coming into a third dimension, they would almost have to anchor some type of energy.
Yeah.
But normally, I don't think they would have gender at all.
Yeah,
right.
They're not just what modern people would call gender fluid. They're physically fluid, so they could appear as a mountain or a tree or whatever and transform to something else. So it's not exactly.
Yeah, we don't have that ability. Well, at least in this dimension.
Right.
We kind of get this meat suit, right?
Right. Yeah,
we're kind of committed to it until the end, and we better take care of it. So Anna follows up and says, some people take this passage, among other passages, to argue that non-binary and trans people don't exist in Arda. And I think that it's not even a relevant passage, because it's describing the Valar, it's not describing humans. Okay,
that's why
I don't.
Mostly orthogonal, which means at right angles too. So it doesn't, it doesn't say one thing or the other. It's describing something completely different.
Yeah, it's different. But now the thing is that so we do wonder why that. So, for instance, we do know that Tolkien himself, being aligned with Catholicism, and Catholicism was really good for Tolkien. I mean, when his parents died and the Catholic Church took care of him, he had a good experience from that. So I would think that his Catholic lens allowed him to see all of this stuff. He read massive scholarly material. He was a linguistic expert like no other, probably, maybe in all time, but definitely of this last century, and possibly longer.
Right.
He had a gift. Yeah.
Even though he didn't.
It was like he could see all of this, but it's going to be colored through the Catholic lens, and he was born in a time that that things were more, I guess, aligned with you are male, you are female. I mean, you
Yeah,
know,
there's actually two main things coloring it there. One is like Calantirniel says, he was born at the time. Also, he viewed it somewhat differently, somewhat more intensely than like a regular person would probably, because he believed that his mother died as a martyr for the faith. Because when she converted to Catholicism, she was rejected by both sides of the family, her dead husband's
yes,
family and her family. And she was basically kicked out and said, "Well, you're on your own now. That includes money. I don't care if you got 2 young kids with you. That's your problem. I
yeah,
didn't tell you to have those kids." You know, that was basically the type. I mean, and it was that, you know, in your face from her point of view. So
right. But I mean, I guess we could see from that angle right there that Catholicism actually helped Tolkien stay alive.
right, yeah,
Um,
yeah, literally.
yeah, quite literally, quite literally. And
Now
the
he wasn't like totally blind to some of the philosophical problems with, well, Christianity in general. You can read that in some of his letters, but
mhm,
it's just that he, you know, he, like Calanterno says, this was his life experience, and so whatever life experience you have, if you have a life experience as a combat soldier, and then you become a veteran, that's going to color your you know, future experiences. So you know,
yeah,
it's
you
that
would
sort
color under that description. You would have you know, you would see life itself, like even in 3D, very differently than other people. And then if you then see anything, you know, 4D plus, you know,
and
it
I
would
just
be colored by that experience. Absolutely.
exactly. I just
Yeah.
kind of and I when I was speaking, I just kind of threw that out. But he actually was a combat veteran of World War I.
Yes, he
So
was.
there
And
you
even
are.
at the time that he was doing all of this and still even writing in the trenches,
Right. Yeah.
tell
Yeah.
me that that's not a natural person that like is, you know, if he can traverse the dimensions in a like trench in the war,
And they were under
yeah, that
fire.
tells
You
me a
know,
lot.
a lot of times when he was writing, they were actually under shell fire. So I don't know if anybody on
Yeah.
the chat has, or you know, watched historical documentaries about World War I, but it was horrific. I mean, there were pieces of dead bodies being blown up in the air and stuff when the shells would come in and stuff like that. I mean, it was pretty bad.
Okay. Now, on the note of non-binary and transgender, etc., like I will say though that now Dave, you might have the actual passages where this relates, but I believe that there is some resonance of like where it describes, like for instance with elves, that like that they looked very similar, meaning that
Oh
male
yeah,
and female elves look
that
similar to each other, but they're not the same. But
there's
they look this, you know, they look
there,
similar.
there there was less what the technical term is sexual dimorphism. There was less difference
Okay.
in strength, speed, and basically external body configuration, with the obvious exception of the genitals. You know, between elven men and women than there is between human men and women.
Okay.
So yeah, as far as athleticism, you know, things like that, they were pretty much on a par. It's just that by custom, generally speaking, the women didn't go into battle as warriors, although they could.
They could. Yeah.
And especially when their homes were attacked,
Yeah.
everybody got
Yeah.
on
They
board.
all like protect it. Yeah. Sure.
And
Yeah.
Galadriel was basically a renowned, what we would now call Amazon. You know, I mean, she was
Yeah.
all of that with regard to athleticism.
Yeah. And then some. And I
Yeah.
mean, and she packed a very powerful punch too.
Right.
I mean, she was really very
Yeah.
powerful. Like we got to see a glimpse of that just in the movies. I think that they did a pretty decent job of that also, in that. And I'm going to say now that for some of you that might be watching, thinking that, you know, Tia Eldaleva, the Elven spiritual path, is not open to, you know, other expressions of gender, that is not correct. We know that we are in a changing time right now, and we accept all kinds of, you know, like I guess every kind of alignment that could be out there. And I know that some are fluid. Some people, like, they may not know.
Right.
They may go through times where they're one and then another expression. That is not important to us. What is important is that your heart arrives with love and that you resonate with the stories at a core level. And we're talking about the levels of love, not the description of, like, oh, you have to look like, an elf, or, I mean,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like, it would be like, oh yes, you have to have the Elven bloodline, and you have to have the, like, you have to have
No.
like perfect hair or something. No, that's not what's happening here. We do want to make that very clear, that anybody that feels the heart pull and that feels the sensation that these stories resonate in their belief system, that's who's welcome here. And even if they don't, and you're just exploring, you're also welcome.
And I think with today's discussion in particular, one thing I'd want to resonate is, like you said, it's not that we're against anything. I think, if anything, we're very open and inclusive. What we have to be careful of, because I see it going back to my own upbringing as a child, I was raised in a very strict Christian home. And one thing I found that I think we have to be careful of is, there was like, when you look at the Christian Bible, it talks about gods beyond human, but yet we have assigned, in trying to identify, a lot of the Christians have identified wrath and jealousy and anger and all of these things attached to God, to the Christian God. And I think with the Valar, with the Iluvatar, with any of that, we have to be careful about trying to identify our understanding on something that is entirely, in essence, beyond.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You can't identify physical things that we understand them on a being that doesn't have those qualities.
Yeah, well, and then reverse engineering, just, I guess, what we have in 3D right now, which, by the way, in this time in the planet where many folks are feeling like not aligned with one or the other in various ways. These are all experiences that we're having as humanity, so that we can learn. I mean, this is what we signed up for. Some of us are, maybe more traditional. Some of us are not. And it's okay. Like, I think that my emphasis is that I want people to be genuinely whoever they are. I don't want them
Correct.
to, like, feel like that they have to be one way or another to be here. I want you to just show up with your heart and say, yes, this is like, this lights me up. This means something to me. These stories, like, resonate with me at a deep level, DNA level. That's what I want.
I was just going to say that wouldn't work anyway. If you're not true to your own nature, eventually things are going to fall out of place.
That's true. That's true. But there are, like, there is this misunderstanding that that because we are a path based on Tolkien's works, that then people must be either Catholic or must be,
Oh, you mean like the what I refer to as Tolkien fundamentalists? Well, I don't pay any attention.
Well, yeah, and actually, I guess that they're not co-founding a spiritual path on that.
Right.
I mean, that's more for scholarly purposes.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is that, yeah, if they read the material in a spiritual form, they would have to be open and inclusive also. But most of the Tolkien fundamentalists that I'm aware of, they are usually either very staunchly Catholic or staunchly atheist, and are dissecting for scholarly purposes, like, for their own, for their own understanding, and not applying it in a, like, wider spiritual lens to me.
Right.
So just, I don't know. I just thought that we should talk about that because, you know, here we were talking about, you know, like how the expressions of the Valar are vast. Yes, right. Anna, she says the home thumpers, you mean? And by home, she means the history of Middle Earth thumpers. Yes, those people.
I mean,
a lot of them are in the Tolkien Society and other places, so that they're staunchly aligned in fundamentalism, whether it's Catholicism, atheism, or academia.
I can thump with the best of them, but I can.
Yes, you can, Dave. Oh, I love it. I love it. It's like, let's watch the show.
But now I don't know if anybody on the call here has ever watched Babylon 5, but
yes.
There's a section in one of it where Jakar, one of the main characters, says, "One does not thump the Book of Jaquan. It is disrespectful." You
know. Well, and it's interesting because, I mean, I think that other religions have this kind of fundamentalism too, where everybody wants to take a quote from a book and apply it to things that it shouldn't apply to. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
It's like, well, Tolkien, you know, like, I mean, this would be like a good example. Tolkien only, you know, does male and female traditional roles because of this passage, which has nothing to do with like what it is that they're using that as a
right.
as
if you take that sentence,
you know, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, if you take that sentence, it would support the idea, but if you take that paragraph, it does not.
It does not, exactly. Context, well, and the paragraph, like, you know, has all of the other expressions, like, you know, that they're a mountain or a tree or all kinds of things. And actually, right there, it invalidates it because they get to express themselves as completely different objects, let alone sexuality.
Right.
So, Anna, tell us if we answered your question. And Faith is on here too, and I haven't seen Ian or anybody else that said that they'd be here. But you know, they'll catch the replay. Hey guys, if you want to ask questions about this, put them down below and we'll try to comment later because we'll be monitoring comments on the replay later. We have lesson 1 and lesson 2 and the relevant notes for each in the prior links also below in the text of this, you know, the description of this video. So just making sure that everything is great here. Anna says you have. Thank you. Oh, excellent. So we answered her question. Awesome.
Okay.
Awesome. So any other and I'll be watching the comments here. Is there any other comments that people would like to make? Because we'll wrap it up. We're about the top of the hour, and just wanted to, you know, give a shout out to our awesome patrons. Thank you for like bringing us to the, you know, 21st century. Recently, we went through a lot of transition. I'm still in transition because you notice I'm still in Montana. I'm in an herb closet. Okay, so I mean, it is like so cottage witchy. It is awesome. Okay, like I'll give you guys a look over here. So, boom.
Nice.
Yeah, actually, I was the first one online, and then when Lisa's image came on, like, Lisa's in a bunker. Yeah.
I'm in a like, I guess for if you were a prepper, yeah, it would look like that. But yeah, I'm in a very pagan household, so it would be more like a cottage witch's you know, stash in here. And some of it is mine that I brought up here. I actually brought some desert white sage with me, a Salvia apiana. I brought some pieces of that I harvested on a new moon, and we're in a new moon time. So this was from, you know, about 4 new moons ago, and it smells amazing still. And you know, there's lots of different things in here, and they grow a lot of herbs here on the property too, and they have crabapple and Honeycrisp apple trees, and they have elderberries and rowan and lots of different things here. It's really great. So Faith says, I am amazed to hear that it isn't just a story and that it is all real. It makes sense. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, people who are drawn to it can sort of feel that,
Yes, and just on the note of, because I'm very more aligned, neo-pagan or witchcraft wise or heathen or druid or any of those, just any of the pre-Christian alignments.
Right.
Faith is actually a Christian and sees the resonance of the stories, and that's pretty awesome. I know that there are people that read the Bible and then they just light up. It's like, oh my God, this is it. I never felt that when I read the Bible.
No.
I felt that when I read the Silmarillion.
Yeah, me either. This basically was my religion from the time I was 12 years old, but I was raised as sort of a lackadaisical Christian. That was mom's religion, basically. But it didn't have the effect on me that the Legendarium does.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't bother me, but I wasn't drawn to it either.
What's your experience, Dikendre?
I was going to say the same thing. For me, I grew up in very, very strict Christian homes in which we went to church every Sunday. We did not hang out with anyone who wasn't either part of our homeschool program or part of our church youth group. We did not listen to any music that wasn't Christian.
Wow.
I mean, we didn't we wore plain t-shirts or Christian logo t-shirts. It was that strict.
Wow.
And yet growing up, I could not identify with that culture. I have nothing against it for the people that want to do it.
Exactly.
But it led to me getting kicked out of church at 9 or 10 years old for asking questions that my pastor told my parents were detrimental to our church.
Right. Yeah, I asked those questions too, but I visited churches. My parents never forced me to go, so I would go with friends of mine. I was always asking very deep questions, none of which ever had answers, by the way, or good answers.
That's kind of funny. I
guess the 12-year-old gets to truth bomb the the poor priest or reverend or preacher.
I didn't have that problem with church because I wasn't that, they could say whatever they wanted and I would nod my head, but then when I got out, I would do whatever I wanted.
Like whatever.
But, yeah. But I did have that problem in school because I identified at around age 9 or 10 as an anarchist and wouldn't salute the flag. So I had a problem with the secular school. I will not swear allegiance to your flag. What has it ever done for me? Sort of thing. Yeah.
Wow.
I got, principal's office and the whole bit, because that was directly insulting the secular religion. And when you insult the, back in the days of the witch burnings, the secular courts were far more horrific than the religious courts. So it was like that,
And Faith just now typed in, says, I am in the middle now, meaning the middle of, say, for instance, Christianity and the Elven path. I still feel like a Christian, but I am looking at what I am learning here, and I'm trying to match up how they go together. And I think that they do, and they absolutely do. We do have Christians that are able to easily meld this into their Christianity. And so and from what they tell me is that they put Christ in the center of because that's their choice. They still resonate with the Christ, okay, that energy, that sun god, SON, okay, and they resonate with him first. But the Elven path gives kind of a more European for sure, but I would even say at this point it's world history that intermeshes with it, and not just the Abrahamic, stories and the that are based on the Sumerian texts. I think that it has elements of other cultures that are interwoven, which was Tolkien's idea, of creating a, if you will, mythology for England, because, one didn't really exist for England. And yeah, he killed it. Okay. He totally did that. So I can totally understand the desire, Faith, for you to bring in this deep cosmology, okay, and be Christian too. You can do it. Absolutely. You can totally do it.
I would also add that when you get into, I don't know, Dave or Calantirniel, if you guys have read the material, but if you get into the Law of One material, which
I've heard
came
of it,
out it came out in the late 70s. It's really interesting material. It's like 4 or 5 books. But it goes very heavily into the fact that the Christ consciousness is more than just a Christian concept. It may have been in essence co-opted by a Christianity, but when you get into it, the idea of the Christ consciousness is that it can apply to almost anything rather seamlessly, being that it is a universal format rather than just one specific being. I would almost take it to the idea that Jesus, as we know him, Jesus of Nazarene, was the most recent Christ, but it is a consciousness, not a specific being.
I would totally agree with that. Totally agree with that. And actually, so I questioned Christianity when I was young, the whole time. Especially when, and by the way, Anna says, OMG, I did the same thing in middle school. So I guess that we all truth bombed our, at 14 years old, which by the way is a Saturn opposition in astrology. So it's totally about challenging authority. Okay. I did not really understand Christianity until I opened myself to the energy of the Christ consciousness, exactly what you're talking about. Okay. And that Christ consciousness actually works whether you are a Christian or not. It will come to you if you call it, even if you're not a Christian. And I think that the calling card of this is that you have love. And yes, I think that when they write in the Bible, God is love, all of that, they're talking about that.
Aren't there even some of Jesus' sayings? Now, I'm reaching back here 30,000 years from my point of view, but nevertheless,
30,000 years? Oh, Christianity isn't that old.
But didn't Jesus actually say something to the? I think it was near the time of his crucifixion that that even though this person being crucified beside me wasn't Christian or wasn't Jewish at the time, wasn't a person of the book as the Islamic people say, but nevertheless he, because of his thoughts and actions, that he would be with me in heaven. I'm really mangling it, but there was something to that effect. That
yes, and you are.
Yeah,
you're correct. You also have to take it one step further and understand that our concept from a Christian standpoint of heaven is very, very flawed, because there was a massive mistranslation. What the original word for heaven was, I don't remember in Hebrew what it was, but the original word did not translate to a place like most Christianity teaches. It actually simply translated to basically outer space. So when
interesting. Okay.
That was the Hebrew word. So when you translated to he will be in heaven or they were taken to the heavens, it really translates to they were taken to outer space. They were taken off
the stars. Wow.
Right. Not to the concept that we understand as a result of Catholicism.
Right. Interesting.
Wow. That's pretty deep. And how, like, even with the lore of the elves, which if you take Eldalia, meaning the elven people, that means the star people.
Correct.
Like if you translate it from Elvish into English, it means the star people. The Quendi are also how they are identified, and that means the speakers, which I just had a recent conversation about how we speak our world into existence, and we have, our throat chakra in many ways is like the ATM card of the universal bank account, and it's never ending, but you need to be very careful what you say because of what your withdrawals may not be like what you ask for, like, like mentally.
Correct.
We have to be really careful what we ask for.
Well, we also don't grow up thinking that, and this is partly a Western culture problem, but that our thoughts are things. We tend to think of our thoughts as just non-tangible, but they can become very, very physical things. They are something already.
Yeah, well, and they can even become 4D things that just overlay you and keep you at a certain place too. Like, and you
Correct.
never see it, but it's there. And you can unlayer all of those things in the fourth dimension and go 5D plus, which are like realms of love, according to certain teachings. Anna says, by the way, it would be really interesting to chat about our upbringing, perhaps on a Facebook group. Dave, since I grew up with very similar experiences. Okay, so Dave, I've never met anybody with your experiences. Crazy.
Okay. Yeah, that'd
be awesome. Maybe we'll do it on YouTube because some of us are getting locked out of Facebook, and they won't let me back in, and I've been locked out for about 3 days. I'm still available on Messenger though, so Anna, I'm pretty sure we're Facebook friends. Maybe one of our upcoming upcoming patron things is like we'll just have a group chat. That'll be great. We can do that. Thank you for the suggestion.
Okay, now are we talking about you're locked out of your whole Facebook account or just locked out of certain sections?
Apparently only certain sections.
Oh, okay.
Meaning all of Facebook except for Messenger, because I'm able to use Messenger. Mm-hmm. Which makes no sense. That's all that Facebook is good for is Messenger, if you ask me. Okay.
Wasn't there some? I mean, now this is Mark Zuckerberg's religion that I'm treading into now, but I mean, his real religion, not that he claims to come from ancestor, but yeah. But didn't they have an apotheosis of Messenger like a few years ago or something like that when they turned it into a phone app, and that's why it has like extra privileges? That's a guess, but
I don't. Well. Yeah. I mean, they definitely, because they made it like SMS, like, how texting is, and you could combine your texting with your texting. And so, he's just selling data.
Yeah, my guess on what's going on behind the scenes is they gave it extra privileges on their platform, so that may be why you can do stuff on it that you can't on the regular Facebook. But that's a guess. Their permission system is labyrinthine like you would not believe. I mean, Well,
I really just think that they were trying to get my phone number, so I gave them my Google number. I mean, I've avoided it for many years now, and I don't really post anything that is controversial. So I know that by their community standards, what they're probably talking about is you have to give us a phone number.
Oh, right, yeah. I don't have a cell phone, so that happened to me once. I had to give my wife's cell phone, and they didn't know the difference as long as they got their little SMS thing, and it was responded to within a few seconds. So there you are. Yes, it must be my phone.
Here you go.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I'm not as bad now as I used to be, but when it came to having to put phone numbers in, I used to put in the like one of the local pizza places. They're like, you need a phone number, and I put in like one of the pizza places I didn't like. I was like, there you go.
I do that all the time when I'm testing out software. Well, download this trial software. Now I'm a big pirate, so often it's easier to get it's easier to get the demo software, the trial version directly from the company rather than trying to go online and get it from BitTorrent because it could be infected if you do that. Oftentimes not, but it can be. Oh yeah, I'll put in the local pizza phone. That's cool. And plus they have a business phone. Here I'm gifting you with and if you get this. There's your, so come on, both of us
We
benefit.
need a mailing address. Here's the local courthouse.
Yeah.
You guys are so funny. So Ed says on the other side of the sphere of the fixed stars. And Dave, do you want to address the cosmology of the Lost Tales with that?
I can't see what the person's typing directly. So what's the question?
Okay. So my guess is that because when we were talking about outer space and the stars, would it be on the other side of the sphere of the fixed stars?
Would what be?
Probably the concept of, like, say, for instance, heaven or other things.
No.
Now, that would be in the Bible, and then I was actually thinking of the Lost Tales as cosmology.
Well, also the fixed stars as we see them, it's a virtual space. It's projected up on a sphere as if basically it's intended to represent what an observer on the ground sees with their naked eye.
That is correct.
And if you look at it from the outside, like if you make a sphere and a star map, that's just a virtual space. There is no edge of the universe as such. So if you go far enough, eventually you end up returning. So it's weird that way. But I'm not going to get into the physics of it. But
yeah, but in the okay, so like in classical astrology, when astronomy and astrology were the same, there was like a star realm, like it was a sphere, like, so each of the planets had a sphere, like, like the Earth, and then the moon was the next one, and then Mercury, and then Mars, and it kept going, and then outward to Saturn, and then it got to the outer circle of the fixed stars, in ancient texts.
Well, yeah, and the reason that was true, if you think about it, the distance between the planets and the distance between the nearest star is so much greater that it looks.
It's greater, and also less accessible, like magically. In order to use the fixed star, because I just took a magic class with stars recently from traditional text from Nina Griffin. It had something to do with you have to align the fixed star with a planet, of the energy that you're like working with in order to actually really access that particular planet, and that you also have to have it on an angle. So you have to like do different things, but that's astrology. I was thinking about the cosmology. Would that be the level of Menel heavens, or would that be a different layer in the cosmology and the Lost Tales?
Okay, well, that was in an early, I believe it was in lesson 1. I actually have that.
Well, we'll go back to lesson 1 then.
That diagram.
Was it in the notes? Was the diagram itself in the notes? Okay, great.
It's in the notes, and I go about explaining the different layers and so forth.
Here's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to go over to, well, no, I'll do it when I get off. I'm okay. In the description below, there is lesson 1, and like whether you want to watch the video or not, there is the notes that are attached to that. There's a diagram there that has Tolkien's Lost Tales diagram, and what it does is it makes Arda, the Earth, rather than look like a planet, like a circular sphere, it makes it look like a ship. And then there's the waters, and all of that, and then there's the void on the outside. So the void would probably be past the stars, past.
Oh
everything.
yeah. If we could actually get to the let's assume that our universe is on a membrane, like some of the physicists believe, along with who knows how many other ones, or perhaps none, because it's difficult to say. But if we could somehow get to the boundary that it emerged from the Big Bang, yeah, we would the outside of that is some sort of undefined space which could correspond to the void, So, and
Yeah.
but I believe I put all the differences in lesson 1. Let me see here. I'm loading the document
Okay.
there. Let's see here. Yeah, here it is. I put this diagram in. Now, I didn't put the ship diagram because that could be confusing to some people, but I did put this diagram of the different levels. And you understand, since these tales were written from the point of view of what we would now call ancient people, and they were, I'm not going to go on with this because it isn't in Tolkien's writings, but I've actually come up with a way to date some of this stuff based on the alignments of the stars. Doesn't really matter. If you go from the point of view of an observer on the surface of the Earth, it's the whole cosmology is based on that headspace. So there you are. You have your Ambar of the Earth. You have your Vista of the air, which is what we would call the troposphere. Then you have Ilmen, where the stars move, and then Vaya, which is like a sort of a cosmic ocean that goes both above and below the Earth. And then outside you have Kuma, which is like a void. Then you even have Ava Kuma, which is like the void of voids. That could be the thing that the universes are supposedly embedded in. But of course, none of this latter information is in the Legendarium because, one, Tolkien didn't know of it, and two, even if he did, it's hard to express. So,
Yeah, but the star realm would be the Menel, the heavens, correct?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
It's also called Ilmen at that early stage.
Ilmen. That's the other name.
Yeah, at that early stage of cognition. They believed that there was like a realm of stars above the air, which actually there is, but to them, from their point of view, it was closer. So it was like you go up above the atmosphere, things start to thin out, perhaps, and then you're in the realm of Ilmen, and then beyond that was the Vaya, the sort of cosmic ocean that goes above the Earth and below it, sort of thing,
Right. Okay. Excellent. Great answer. By the way, for those of you who don't know, I'm an astrologer, but Dave is an amateur astronomer and damn good at it.
I've been doing it since I was 7 years old.
I love how that comes together in so many ways. It's really cool. So yeah, I hope that we covered that pretty well. So I'm going to see like if there's any other questions or anything else happening. And I know that we're going well over an hour now. We're at, oh my gosh, we are at 1:22:33.
We usually do, though. To be fair, we usually do.
Really?
I
now
don't
at 1:22:44.
Just to let the people know.
1:22:55.
Just let the people know it's in EndNote 10 of lesson 1 where the diagram is and its explanation.
That's excellent.
I think sometimes
I'm having a double numbers. For those of you who don't know, ever since I left San Diego, I have had constant double numbers. Constant. Okay. Now I know what it's about, and I'll share that one day. But it's been pretty surreal to have 30 to 50 times a day, seeing double numbers and sometimes triple numbers.
Ooh, fun.
Yeah. And it used to be maybe twice a day that I'd see those kinds of things, not like multiple times. So, be interesting. So my spirit guides are way knocking on my door, telling me some changes are coming. And I would say that they are.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so I think that we've got everything. I think we'll go ahead and end. Do any of you have some closing remarks or anything about the Ainulindalë? We'll have the Valaquenta starting a little bit later. We're not really sure when that'll start, but we'll keep in touch with all of you via Patreon, if nothing else. And depending on how much Facebook and Instagram want to, censor me or, whatever it is, like, oh my God, I'm so dangerous. Just to let you guys know that Patreon, just check your email and we'll, keep you updated as much as we can. Okay, Dave, are you going to be starting to work on Valaquenta notes so that I can give our patrons, an early access notes? Okay,
yeah, I can do that next. So I can start it next day or so.
Excellent. For news for all of you insider people, we're also getting much closer to having new logos and new other things happening since we've had some changes internally. On our board and everything, we had to change some other things, to do that. And so we're working on that, and we're pretty excited about the behind the scenes on the new designs. They're, oh my gosh, they're really, they're not even done yet. And I'm like, really? They're so
I told you my friend was good at digital art.
You did. You told me Luthien was the bomb, and I'm like, yeah, she's the bomb. Yep. She's awesome. So we're very excited to bring new art, and that art will be translated into our Redbubble store for t-shirts and other goods and other things. And hopefully we'll have that up and running by the holiday season when, gifting time, it'll be ideal to, have that done by then. So just FYI to all of you. And yeah, secret info, right? So anyways, I guess we'll end the broadcast. You guys want to say goodbye and LAITA blessings to everyone?
LAITA.
Yeah.
LAITA.
Have a good day and have a good night and have a happy Queran Narqualie, which is the newly waxing moon of the fading fire. That's what Narqualie, that's what it means for the month. And we are still resonating with the halls of Mondos, Namo, with that, the doomsman of the Valar. So if you feel like huge release happening right now, that might be part of the reason, along with a whole bunch of other astrology that I won't go into here. You guys have a good one. Take care. Good night, good afternoon, good morning, good wherever you are in the world. We hope that you're doing well. Thank you for coming. Bye-bye. Thank you, Esther.
Okay, did you